The letter arrived in a plain white envelope, but its words burned like wildfire. "You're not welcome at the party, Lila," it read, her mother's elegant cursive slicing through her heart. Lila stood frozen in her tiny apartment, the paper trembling in her hands, as the weight of rejection crushed her dreams of reconciliation. Lila Harper, 28, had always been the dreamer in her small Ohio town of Willow Creek. With her paint-splattered hands and a heart full of stories, she'd spent years sketching the world she wished for, one where love wasn't a crime. But Willow Creek clung to its traditions like ivy to old brick, and Lila's love for Amara Cole, the sharp-witted bookstore owner who'd stolen her heart, was a scandal whispered in grocery aisles and church pews. It wasn't always like this. Lila had grown up in the warm glow of her mother Evelyn's affection. Evelyn, a pillar of Willow Creek's social scene, threw extravagant parties that drew the whole town, events Lila once adored helping plan. This year's gala, Evelyn's 60th birthday, was to be the grandest yet, and Lila had poured her soul into it. She'd spent weeks designing invitations, curating playlists, and sketching table centerpieces, all while hoping this might mend the rift that had grown since she came out as a lesbian 2 years ago. Her mother hadn't spoken to her since the day Lila confessed her love for Amara, the silence a wound that never healed. Lila's apartment, a cozy loft above a coffee shop, was her sanctuary. Canvases lined the walls, bursting with bold colors and abstract shapes that told stories she couldn't speak aloud. She sank onto her worn couch, the letter still clutched in her hand, and let the tears come. Amara found her there an hour later, her green eyes softening with concern as she knelt beside her. "They don't want me there," Lila whispered, her voice breaking. "My own mother. She said I'd ruin her perfect day." Amara's jaw tightened, but her touch was gentle as she brushed a strand of chestnut hair from Lila's face. "You don't need their approval," she said fiercely. "You're enough. We're enough." But Lila wasn't so sure. The rejection stung not just because it was her mother, but because it was her town, her home. She'd grown up running through Willow Creek's fields, laughing with neighbors who now crossed the street to avoid her. The gala was her last chance to prove she was still the daughter Evelyn once loved, still the artist who could make beauty out of chaos. Now that chance was gone. Amara pulled Lila into her arms, her blazer smelling faintly of old books and lavender. "We'll make our own celebration," she said. "Something better. Something real." Lila shook her head, her voice barely audible. "I wanted to fix this. I thought, maybe if I made her party perfect, she'd see me again. Not as a disappointment, but as her daughter." The idea struck her then, reckless and raw. If her mother wouldn't let her into the gala, she'd find another way to show Willow Creek who she was. She'd throw a rival event, a party that celebrated love in all its forms, a defiant middle finger to the town's judgment. Amara's eyes lit up as Lila shared her plan, her usual caution giving way to excitement. "We'll call it the Unity Party," Lila said, a spark igniting in her chest. "A night for everyone who's ever felt pushed out. We'll show them what love really looks like." The next week was a whirlwind. Lila and Amara transformed the back room of Amara's bookstore, the open page, into a planning hub. They strung fairy lights across the ceiling, pinned sketches of decorations to the walls, and drafted invitations on creamy cardstock. Lila's artist friends from the city, painters, musicians, poets, promised to perform, their enthusiasm fueling her resolve. Amara reached out to her network of queer activists, who spread the word to nearby towns. The Unity Party would be held the same night as Evelyn's gala, in the old community barn on the edge of Willow Creek, a venue Lila knew was free because her mother had rejected it as too rustic. But whispers travel fast in small towns. By the second week, Lila overheard snatches of conversation at the diner. "Evelyn's daughter is causing trouble again. She's throwing some kind of alternative party. Disgraceful." The words cut, but Lila pressed on, pouring her pain into every detail. She painted a massive mural for the barn's entrance, a swirl of colors depicting intertwined hands, every shade, every identity united. Amara handled logistics, her calm efficiency grounding Lila's chaotic energy. One evening as they worked late, Amara paused, her pen hovering over a guest list. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "This town. They're not going to make it easy." Lila looked at her, the woman who'd become her anchor. Amara's short black hair was mussed from hours of planning, her green eyes tired but fierce. I'm sure, Lila said. I'm done hiding. But doubt lingered. Lila knew her mother's influence ran deep. Evelyn was the queen of Willow Creek's social order, her approval a currency no one dared refuse. The gala was the event of the year, and Lila's unity party was a direct Challenger rebellion that could either change hearts or burn bridges forever. As the days ticked down, Lila's resolve hardened. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Amara, for their love, for every person in Willow Creek who'd ever felt like they didn't belong. The unity party would be her masterpiece, a night of music, art, and truth. But deep down, a small voice whispered, what if no one comes? What if her mother's rejection was just the beginning? The barn smelled of hay and possibility as Lila stepped inside, her boots echoing on the worn wooden floor. Outside, Willow Creek was abuzz with preparations for Evelyn's gala. But here, in this forgotten space, Lila was building something new. She climbed a ladder to hang another string of lights, her heart racing with a mix of fear and defiance. The unity party was taking shape. The mural at the entrance was nearly complete, its vibrant colors glowing under the afternoon sun. Tables were draped in rainbow cloths, and a stage was set for the Musicianza folk band from Cleveland, a queer poet from Columbus, and a drag performer who'd promised to shake the dust off this town. Amara was outside, directing a delivery of chairs, her voice steady as she negotiated with the supplier. Lila watched her through the barn's open doors, marveling at how Amara could make even chaos feel manageable. But the town's whispers were growing louder. At the grocery store, Lila had caught Mrs. Hensley, Evelyn's best friend, glaring at her. You're making a fool of your mother, she'd hissed before turning away. Later at the post office, Lila overheard two women giggling about that lesbian party. The words stung, but they also fueled her. If Willow Creek wanted to talk, she'd give them something worth talking about. That night, Lila and Amara sat cross-legged on the barn floor, surrounded by half-finished decorations. Lila sketched ideas for a photo booth, her pencil flying across the page, while Amara sorted RSVPs. The guest list was growing. Over 50 people had confirmed, a mix of locals and out-of-towners. But Lila's heart sank when she saw the names. None of her old friends, none of her family, not even her cousin Sarah, who'd once been her confidant. They're scared, Amara said, reading her expression. This town's got them all under Evelyn's thumb. Lila nodded, but the ache in her chest grew. She'd hoped at least one person from her past would show up, someone to bridge the gap between who she was and who she'd become. Do you think we're crazy for doing this? She asked, her voice small. Amara reached for her hand, her touch warm and steady. Maybe a little, she said with a grin. But the best things come from a little crazy. The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the barn door. Lila's heart leapt. Had someone come to help? But when she opened the door, she found a group of teenagers, their faces half hidden in the dark. One of them, a boy she recognized from church, smirked. Nice party, freak, he said, tossing a crumpled flyer at her feet. The others laughed before sprinting off into the night. Lila stood frozen, the flyer a copy of their unity party invitation laying in the dirt. Amara picked it up, her face hardening. They're just kids, she said, but her voice trembled with anger. They don't know any better. But Lila knew it wasn't just kids. The town was closing ranks, and Evelyn was at the center of it. Lila had heard rumors that her mother was rallying her friends to boycott the unity party, calling it a mockery of decent values. The thought made Lila's stomach churn. She'd spent her life trying to make Evelyn proud, and now her mother was leading the charge against her. The next day, Lila threw herself into work, determined to drown out the doubt. She painted signs, hung lanterns, and helped Amara set up a sound system. But the closer the party got, the more obstacles appeared. The florists canceled their order, claiming a scheduling conflict. The caterer doubled their price at the last minute, forcing Lila to dip into her savings. And when she went to pick up extra chairs, the rental company claimed they'd been overbooked. It's her, Lila said to Amara that evening, her voice shaking. My mother's doing this. She's trying to sabotage us. Amara pulled her close, her arms a safe haven. Let her try, she said. We're stronger than that. But Lila wasn't so sure. That night she couldn't sleep, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if the barn stayed empty? What if the town's hatred won? She slipped out of bed and sat at her easel, painting until dawn. The canvas filled with stormy blues and fiery reds, a reflection of the battle raging inside her. By the morning of the party, Lila was exhausted but resolute. She and Amara arrived at the barn early, transforming it into a wonderland of light and color. The mural glowed, the stage was set, and the air hummed with possibility. Guests began to arrive, strangers from nearby cities, a few brave locals, and a handful of Lila's artist friends. But as the clock ticked closer to the start time, Lila's heart sank. The crowd was smaller than she'd hoped, and the absence of familiar faces cut deep. Then, just as the band began to play, a car pulled up outside. Lila's breath caught as she recognized her cousin Sarah stepping out, her face nervous but determined. "I couldn't stay away," Sarah said, pulling Lila into a hug. "I'm proud of you." Tears stung Lila's eyes as she hugged her cousin back. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The music swelled, and the barn began to fill with laughter and chatter. For the first time in weeks, Lila felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this night could change things. The Unity Party was alive with energy, the barn pulsing with music and light. Lila stood near the entrance, greeting guests, her heart swelling with every smile and handshake. The crowd was small but vibrant, queer couples dancing, artists sharing stories, and a few curious locals mingling cautiously. Amara worked the room like a conductor, her laughter cutting through the music as she introduced strangers and poured drinks. But Lila couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Outside, the night was dark, and she caught glimpses of figures lingering near the barn's entrance, townsfolk, she assumed drawn by curiosity or malice. She tried to focus on the party, on the poet reciting verses of love and resistance, but her mother's absence loomed like a shadow. Sarah stayed close, her presence a lifeline. "This is incredible," she said, gesturing to the mural. "You've always had a way of making things beautiful." Lila smiled, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She'd heard that Evelyn's gala was in full swing at the town hall, its chandeliers glittering, its guests dressed in finery. Lila had once dreamed of being there, arm in arm with her mother, laughing as they welcomed guests. Now she was here in a barn, fighting for a place in a town that didn't want her. As the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted. A group of men, friends of Evelyn's, Lila recognized, appeared at the entrance, their faces hard. One of them, Mr. Carver, a local businessman, stepped forward. "This is a disgrace," he said loudly, his voice carrying over the music. "You're mocking everything this town stands for." The room quieted, all eyes on Lila. Her heart pounded, but she stepped forward, her voice steady. "This party is about love," she said. "If that's a disgrace, then I'm proud to be part of it." The crowd murmured, some in support, others in shock. Mr. Carver sneered, but before he could speak, Amara was at Lila's side, her green eyes blazing. "You're welcome to join us," she said coolly. "Or you can leave." The men hesitated, then turned and left, their muttered insults fading into the night. The party resumed, but the air felt heavier. Lila's hand shook as she poured herself a drink, her mind racing. She'd expected resistance, but not this brazen confrontation. It was a reminder of how deep the town's prejudice ran. Sarah pulled her aside, her face worried. "Lila, I heard something at the gala. Your mom. She's telling people you're trying to ruin her. She's saying you're unstable." The words hit like a punch. Lila had always known her mother disapproved, but to paint her as a villain to the entire town? It was a betrayal she hadn't prepared for. She looked at Amara, who was laughing with a guest, unaware of the storm brewing in Lila's heart. She wanted to run to her, to hide in her arms, but she couldn't shake the fear that this fight was bigger than both of them. The party pushed on, and Lila threw herself into hosting, determined to keep the night alive. The drag performer took the stage, their sequin dress sparkling as they lip-synced to a crowd favorite. The room erupted in cheers, and for a moment, Lila felt invincible. But then she saw a flicker of movement outside, followed by the sound of shattering glass. She rushed to the barn's side window, her heart sinking. Someone had thrown a rock, cracking the glass and scattering shards across the floor. The music stopped and guests gathered, their faces a mix of fear and anger. Amara was at Lila's side in an instant, her hand on her shoulder. "We're okay," she said firmly. "They can't stop us." But Lila wasn't so sure. She stepped outside, scanning the darkness for the culprit, but found only a crumpled note tied to another rock. Go back to the city, freaks. Her hands trembled as she showed it to Amara, who crumpled it in her fist. We can call the police, Sarah suggested, but Lila shook her head. The Willow Creek police were Evelyn's friends. They'd do nothing. Instead, she turned to the crowd, her voice rising. This is our night, she said. They can throw rocks, they can call us names, but we're here. And we're not going anywhere. The guests cheered, their voices drowning out the fear. The music started again, louder this time, and Lila felt a surge of pride. But as she looked at the broken window, she knew this was only the beginning. Her mother's gala was still happening, and Evelyn's influence was a tidal wave she couldn't outrun. The Unity Party was a statement, but it had also made Lila a target. As the night wound down, Lila and Amara stood together, watching the last guests leave. The barn was a mess of confetti and empty cups, but it felt alive, like a heart that had finally started beating. We did it, Amara said, her voice soft with pride. Lila nodded, but her smile was strained. She'd won a battle, but the war was far from over. Somewhere across town, her mother was toasting to her own success, oblivious to the daughter she'd cast out. Lila's heart ached, but she held Amara's hand, grounding herself in the love that had carried her this far. The morning after the Unity Party, Willow Creek buzzed with gossip. Lila woke to a flood of texts from Sarah, screenshots of social media posts calling the party a circus and Lila a troublemaker. Her mother's gala, by contrast, was hailed as a triumph, its photos plastered across local blogs. Lila scrolled through them, her chest tightening at the sight of Evelyn, radiant in a silver gown, surrounded by adoring guests. Amara found her sitting on the apartment floor, phone in hand. Don't do this to yourself, she said, gently taking the phone. You made something real last night. They can't take that away. But Lila felt the weight of the town's judgment. The broken window, the note, the whispers, it was all too much. She'd poured everything into the Unity Party, and while it had been a success for those who came, it hadn't changed Willow Creek. If anything, it had made things worse. She'd heard rumors that Evelyn was planning to address the disruption at a town meeting, and Lila knew she'd be the target. I need to talk to her, Lila said suddenly, her voice firm. I need to know why she hates me so much. Amara's eyes widened. Lila, she banned you from her party. She's made it clear where she stands. But Lila couldn't let it go. She'd spent 2 years hoping for reconciliation, and now with the town turning against her, she needed answers. She drove to her mother's house, a stately Victorian on the edge of Willow Creek, its garden manicured to perfection. Her heart pounded as she knocked, half expecting Evelyn to slam the door in her face. To her surprise, Evelyn opened the door, her face a mask of calm. What do you want, Lila? She asked, her voice cold. Lila took a deep breath, her words spilling out. I planned your party, Mom. Every detail, every song, every flower. I did it because I love you. Why wasn't that enough? Evelyn's expression didn't soften. You made your choices, she said. You chose that lifestyle. You chose to embarrass me. Lila's throat tightened. I chose to love someone. That's not a crime. Evelyn looked away, her hand smoothing her skirt, a nervous habit Lila knew well. This town has standards, she said. You're tearing them apart. The words cut deeper than the letter. Lila wanted to scream, to beg, but instead, she turned and left, her mother's silence following her like a ghost. Back at the apartment, Amara was waiting, her face falling as Lila recounted the conversation. She'll never change, Lila said, her voice breaking. I thought if I showed her who I am, she'd love me again. Amara pulled her close, her voice fierce. You don't need her love. You have mine. You have Sarah's. You have everyone who showed up last night. But Lila couldn't shake the pain. The next few days were a blur of cleaning up the barn and dodging judgmental stares. Then came the town meeting. Lila hadn't planned to attend, but Sarah convinced her, saying, You need to face them. Show them you're not ashamed. The meeting was held in the town hall, its walls lined with portraits of Willow Creek's founders. Lila sat in the back, Amara's hand in hers, as Evelyn took the podium. Her mother's speech was polished, praising the gala's success and the town's values. Then she turned to the Unity Party. My daughter's event was a misguided attempt to divide us, Evelyn said, her voice steady. We must stand together against such disruptions. The room erupted in murmurs, some nodding, others glancing at Lila. Her face burned, but she stood, her voice cutting through the noise. I threw that party for love, she said. For everyone who's ever felt like they don't belong here. If that's a disruption, then maybe this town needs disrupting. The room fell silent. Evelyn's face paled, but she said nothing. Amara squeezed Lila's hand, her eyes shining with pride. A few people clapped, hesitant at first, then louder. It wasn't the whole room, but it was enough to make Lila's heart lift. That night, Lila and Amara sat on their apartment balcony, the stars bright above Willow Creek. I don't know if I changed anything, Lila said, her voice soft. But I said what I needed to. You did more than that, Amara said. You gave people hope. Lila leaned into her, the weight of the week easing slightly. She thought of the guests at the Unity party, the broken window, her mother's cold words. It wasn't the ending she'd dreamed of, but it was a beginning. She'd fought for her truth, and that was something no one could take away. Weeks passed, and Willow Creek settled into an uneasy quiet. Lila's speech at the town meeting lingered in the air, a spark that hadn't quite caught fire. She and Amara returned to their routines, Lila painting, Amara running the bookstore, but the town felt different, its judgment softer, its whispers less sharp. A few locals began visiting the open page, their curiosity outweighing their prejudice. One even apologized for the broken window, leaving a note with a donation to fix it. Lila threw herself into her art, channeling her pain and hope into new canvases. Her latest piece, a vibrant depiction of the Unity Party, hung in the bookstore's window, drawing eyes and sparking conversations. Amara framed it with pride, calling it Lila's heart on display. But Lila still carried the ache of her mother's rejection, a wound that flared every time she passed Evelyn's house. One afternoon, as Lila was sketching in the bookstore, Sarah burst in, her face alight with news. You need to see this, she said, handing Lila her phone. It was a local blog post titled Willow Creek's Divide, A Daughter's Courage. The writer, a young journalist named Mia, had attended the Unity Party and written about its impact, how it had challenged the town's norms and given voice to the marginalized. The post ended with a call for acceptance, citing Lila as an inspiration. Lila's eyes filled with tears as she read. People are talking, Sarah said. Not everyone agrees, but they're listening. That evening, Lila and Amara hosted a small gathering at the bookstore, a follow-up to the Unity Party. The crowd was modest but warm, new faces mixed with familiar ones, including Mia, who thanked Lila for her courage. As they talked, Lila felt a shift, a sense that Willow Creek was slowly waking up. Then came the unexpected. A week later, Lila found a letter in her mailbox, not in Evelyn's cursive, but typed formal. It was an invitation to a private dinner at her mother's house. No explanation, just a date and time. Lila's heart raced as she showed it to Amara, who frowned. It could be a trap, she said. Or maybe she's ready to talk. Lila debated for days, torn between hope and fear. In the end, she went, driven by the same stubborn love that had made her plan the Unity Party. She arrived at Evelyn's house alone, her hands trembling as she knocked. Her mother opened the door, her face softer than before but still guarded. The dinner was quiet, the table set for two. Evelyn spoke first, her voice halting. I read the article, she said. I didn't realize how much you were hurting. Lila's breath caught. She wanted to lash out, to list every wound her mother had inflicted, but she held back. I just wanted you to see me, she said. All of me. Evelyn looked down, her hands folded tightly. I don't understand your life, she admitted. But I don't want to lose you. It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was a crack in the wall between them. They talked for hours, not resolving everything but planting a seed. Evelyn didn't mention Amara, and Lila didn't push, but when she left, her mother hugged her, a brief, awkward embrace that felt like a promise. Back at the apartment, Lila told Amara everything, her voice thick with emotion. Amara listened, her green eyes steady, then pulled Lila into her arms. You're changing things, she said. Not just for us but for everyone. The next month, Lila and Amara planned another Unity event, smaller but no less meaningful. This time, a few more locals came, including a teenager who shyly thanked Lila for making them feel seen. Willow Creek wasn't transformed, but it was shifting one heart at a time. Lila's relationship with Evelyn remained fragile, a work in progress. But as she stood in the bookstore, surrounded by her art and Amara's love, Lila knew she'd found her place. She'd been rejected, mocked, and banned, but she'd also been brave. And in that bravery, she built something beautiful: a community, a home, a future where love could thrive.